Well, good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Everybody had a good holiday. Together again for session 4. This evening, we'll be conducting another good session of extending the marketing issues. Few connection problems, but I think we'll be able to get through it this evening and have another good session. At least I anticipate us being able to do that. But first of all, before getting started, I want to make sure that everybody can hear me. So as usual, please place a 1 in the chat box if you can hear me. 2 if you're having any problems at all hearing me. Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead with our session 4, which is we're still in the planet session, a planet module, beginning with marketing. Covering, recapping where we are in the process. We started out with the defining step, then we moved over into research. Then the third section was to actually begin to plan the business, beginning with the marketing. So this will be a continuation of last week's session where we covered some marketing issues, and we'll get into 4 new topics this evening. So everybody is primed for participating, and I'm sure that we will have another good session. And start it off by kind of recapping and reviewing a few of the topics that we went over. One of the things that we talked about at the top of last week's session was choosing your business model. Now, one of the things that we had said early on was for people to go back and kind of assess their resources, their finances, equipment that it's going to take to do the business, the kind of relationships you may need, and kind of assess those things to make a determination of where you're going to start. So last week, we took a look at a couple of examples that I had worked with in past classes of people starting businesses. And when you're talking about choosing this business model, there are 3 things that you want to have in play with that. First of all, doing your research, you're going to be looking at the cost of actually starting the business. And in that assessment of reviewing what kind of resources are going to take, your risk tolerance, your capacity to actually put the time and what it takes to put into the business. And if necessary, after assessing those things, then consider some other models if you determine that you don't have quite the things you need in order to get that ultimate plan in place. So if necessary, assess other models for startup, conduct some research on that particular model. So that was what we had talked about, and you've been able to give some thought to those, consideration to that, your business model, a nation of where you're going to go and what you're going to proceed with. So the plan that you put together from here will actually be targeted toward that new model that you developed. The next thing that I want to talk about in the review is some marketing topics that we talked about. And we started out talking about what is marketing. Marketing is being an organized, strategic activities that work together to communicate and deliver value to customers at a profitable price. And we emphasize this profitable price. Chance to see more of that in play in the upcoming sessions when we start to talk about pricing and some of the financial issues. But it's about value, but at a price that the business can afford to deliver, where it can still be operating business. And it's a profitable price that allows us to do that. So we want to keep that piece of the definition in mind. We're always trying to pursue things price for the business. And then we went through a few tips. We looked at various activities involved in the marketing plan, defining and describing your products, describing your customer, distribution, advertising and promotion, creating messages, but we spent some time elaborating on those topics. And when it comes to describing the products and services that you have, those features and benefits, and they relate to what we did in the define it step. When you answer that question, what makes you different? What distinguishes your product or service from the others that are on the market that do the same thing, something similar, or a substitute? Distinguishing characteristics that you use in terms of describing your products. And we call them features and benefits. The second thing that we related to when we talked about customers, when we were talking about the defining step, we looked at 3 things that help us profile them: demographics, geographics, and psychographics. But we took it a little further last week and talked about the need to learn the behavior of your customers as time goes on. What they buy, what motivates them, what's their decision-making process. That's the kind of information going forward you want to be able to capture about your customers. Messaging. And we talked about the need for different messages for different customer segments. And we looked at an example of a person that was selling shirts, and they were selling shirts to the store to get that store, but also they have the consumer. But their messaging has to be totally different for both of those segments. The consumer is interested in style and color and how popular it is, does it fit with the current trends. But the retailer is interested in something altogether different. His needs relate to, what is my profit margin? How are you going to advertise and promote this product to get it off my shelf and into consumers' hands? What are your return policies? Those are the type of issues that speak to his needs. So your messaging is different from your consumer to the retail store. And finally, we discussed distribution in terms of how you bring products and services to the marketplace. And we learned that there are different participants in the chain of distribution. Again, going back to the example of manufacturing shirts, you have that producing the shirts, but then you may have a wholesaler distributor that's selling to retail stores. The retail stores then sell to the end user. And we also learned during that process with each participant that's in the chain, it has an effect and profit margin. And we'll learn more about the specifics of the price and profit margin in these sessions upcoming. Learned last week is that different participants in the distribution chain affect price and profit margin. So that's a recap of last week. Any questions? So we can proceed right into talking about the next 4 topics that we're going to be dealing with this evening. And they are marketing topics as a continuation of last week's session. So this evening, we're going to be focused on competition, positioning or niche, advertising and promotion, and the art of pricing. There's an art of pricing. There's a science of pricing. When we're dealing with the science of pricing, we're dealing with its exactness and the numbers and the calculations. But before getting into that as a piece of marketing, we're going to be talking about the art of pricing. And we'll find that there's a little difference, but they complement one another. So those are the topics for this evening. And just like last week, we'll kind of extend out some of the things, some of the definition and some of additional things to think about in each one of those topic areas. And it will complement some of the things you read in Jerry's story. So first, let's talk about competition. And as we talked about it in the define it section and when we were talking about research, competition is defined as meeting the same need for the same people. Whatever business that is in the marketplace that's meeting the same need for the same people, those are people that are competing with you. They don't necessarily have to be selling the exact same product or service that you're selling. As long as they're meeting the need for the same people, they are in the competitive arena for you. So one of the things that we talked about in terms of identifying information about competition is looking at primary and secondary research. Primary, talking to consumers or individuals that are out in the marketplace making purchases, talking to business owners that are in that type of business that's already selling the same products and services that you're looking at trying to market, and doing the secondary research, we can uncover that information about competition. But what's important about learning about competition is how you use the information when you find it. Identifying the information is one thing, using it in your strategy is another. And that's what we'll be talking about this evening. And I'll point to an example that I had experienced with early on in my business career to kind of paint the picture of what I mean about how to use the information. So I think I've related to everybody that my first business was in the hair care industry during the Jerry curl or curly perm era, going back to the early 80s and up until the end of the 80s, early 90s. And we were my partner and I, in our business, we were in a very competitive situation. We were representing a company called Bronner Brothers Products, and Bronner Brothers wasn't as well known as a lot of the other companies in the industry. And the competitive environment that we had to compete in was, one, a lot of the competitors were well advertised. They were advertising in the major magazines that existed, that were popular then, Ebony, Jet, Essence. They were also doing a lot of radio commercials, billboard advertising, transit advertising. They were well entrenched in the marketplace because of that, and they had great market awareness from consumers because they were so well advertised. As a result of that, they had a tremendous share of the marketplace. When it came to retail distribution, there were a lot of other brands that we were competing with that had a lot of market share that they were firmly entrenched with. In addition to that, one of the primary competitors was very popular with hairdressers and consumers because they were so well advertised and they had such a tremendous market share. They were very popular with the trade, and the trade we meant by hairdressers, hairstylists that were using the product. And in addition to that, they were the product of choice for beauty schools. And the reason beauty schools are significant in this conversation is that beauty schools were actually training a lot of the hairdressers that were coming out, going into the salons to work. And they would use these products. A lot of them used the competitors, that main competitor that we were dealing with. They used that particular company's product in the beauty schools. So that's kind of that competitive backdrop that we had to deal with in introducing this company that we were representing called Bronner Brothers Products. And with Bronner Brothers, they had no national advertising to really speak of, to advertise their product or promote it. They had minimal market share in terms of having distribution that in the retail market with stores and in the professional market with salons. They had limited market awareness in terms of be it consumers, be it hairdressers. They were limited in terms of what the marketplace knew of them, and their packaging and imagery was marginal at best. And what I mean by that, a lot of the other companies had really high grade packaging in terms of the graphics that they were using, the colors that they were using. When they advertised their products in the magazines or other media, they used very good imagery and photos. And the company that we represented didn't have the resources to provide that level of imagery and packaging, but it ended up being a competitive advantage all the same for those competitors that we were dealing with in the marketplace. So being confronted with that particular set of circumstances caused us to have to come up with a good strategy for this particular company. And what I just like to talk about is how we took a competitive disadvantage and found a way to compete in the marketplace that allowed Bronner Brothers, our client, to actually gain a real foothold in the marketplace and become one of the more popular brands in the category. So here's the story and here's the situation. The curly perm marketplace. The competition that we dealt with, and this pretty much went for most of the companies that were in the industry at that time. The process to do a jerry curl consisted of 3 basic steps that pretty much all companies formulated their products to do. It involved the straightening process. The second step was to wrap the hair on the rods that will form the curl. And the third step was to what they call neutralize the process, get the chemical to stop from acting, which would end up in the curl, and you'd have that curl pattern in your hair when they remove the rods. So that was the process. So one of the strategies that we looked at was the fact that the beauty schools were using one of our primary competitors, a company called Carefree Curl out of Chicago. And this chain of beauty schools was called Wilford Academy. They had about 65 or 70 schools, as far north as Boston, as far south as Miami, Florida, as far west as Chicago. And in the cities that they were located in, they were responsible for training as much as 85 to 90% of the hairdressers that came into the marketplace to work in salons. Our competitor was firmly entrenched in that beauty school as the product of choice to train hairdressers in doing the jerry curl. Now, the reason that was significant is people could go to the beauty schools to get their hair done rather than going into salons. And the reason that they wanted to do that, at that time, if you went into a salon to get your hair done, it could cost $100 or better. In the beauty schools, you could go get your hair done for $25 or $30. You'd have students working on your head, but you could get a curl for a lot less price. And my partner and I figured that if we could convince the beauty school to take our product and use it rather than the product they were currently using, the Carefree Curl, we could make an entry into the marketplace. So we went in to do a demonstration, and this is the competitive conversation that we had with them. The first step in doing this curl was the straightening process. With the competitor, you had to have a mild, a regular, or super formula on hand, so you could service whatever customer walked in your door. If the customer had thin hair, you use a mild. If they had a normal length hair, you use a regular. For coarse, thick, long hair, you use a super. Well, With the Bronner product, what we discovered, it had a one strength straightener, meaning that you only had to carry one strength. And rather than us having the multiple strengths, we made it a timed process where if a person came in with lesser hair, they leave it on less time, more coarse, thick hair, longer hair, we leave it on longer. But it would save the hairdresser a lot of time and a lot of money. That was the first thing that we were able to demonstrate to them. The second thing that we showed them in the demonstration, the second step was to actually roll the hair on these rods using a wrapping solution. With the curl of the competitor, you had to use that wrapping solution full strength. Well, with the company that we were representing, dilute the wrapping solution, 2 parts water to 1 part wrapping solution, it would go twice as far, again, saving the hairdresser and that beauty school some money. Those are significant savings for them. But here's what really turned the trick for that beauty school. The third step in the process was what we call neutralizing, where you put this chemical on and that neutralizer would actually stop the action of the straightening and form this curl. Well, in order to do that with our competitor, the person had to go under the hairdryer for at least 30 minutes, sometimes as long as 40 minutes. Well, with the company that we represented, the neutralizing process had no drying time. You didn't have to use a dryer at all. You would put the person under a plastic cap, let them sit out in the open air, and the product would neutralize itself. Now, not only were they saving related to product, but in this instance, they would have 25 to 30 hair dryers going all day long in these beauty schools with these people getting these curls. We were able to tell them and show them that you could produce this curl and turn off all of those hair dryers and do whatever it is you need to do with them other than put your curl patrons under them. That translated into a tremendous savings for them. And what the company ended up doing after we did the demonstration, the hair turned out well. They bought the product for that one location, used it a week, set us a demonstration at the main headquarters, which we did the same demonstration. They ended up putting the product in all of their schools. And as a result of that, Bronner was able to get positioned in the marketplace and be one of the top brands in the curl category, primarily from us looking at what the competition's weaknesses were, what advantages Bronner had, and taking those advantages and turning them into a winning marketing strategy in the marketplace for us and the Bronner company. And the thing about this whole strategy, Bronner Brothers didn't realize that they had these advantages until my partner and I told them and revealed this strategy to them. So this ended up being a very winning strategy for us and our client. And it's an example of how you use the information. Once you find information on competition, there are weaknesses and disadvantages and where there's some voids, you actually use that information in the marketplace and turn those advantages that you have into a winning strategy for you to capture the marketplace and make sales. I can think of one other example of a colleague of mine who had a company that was doing repair services of equipment for large companies. And he was in a competitive situation where a lot of the companies that he was competing against was much larger than him, had a lot more resource, and he was in this competitive situation where they were providing these services to repair this equipment, and all of the customers needed to have a contract with their service provider saying that they will provide up to 16 hours of service per day for repairing their equipment, meaning that if the equipment went down anywhere in that 16-hour window, the service provider will provide a technician to go out and repair that equipment. So what my colleague did in his proposal, what he proposed was to provide those clients 24 hours of coverage instead of 16, 24 hours of coverage at the same price. Now, my question to him was, well, how could you do that? And what he had done was looked at the competition, how they bid it, looked at the needs of the client. And what he found was he could provide them 24 hours of coverage because between 12 at night and 6 in the morning, they were closed anyway. But it sounded good to that customer that they were getting extra hours of coverage, even if they really didn't need it. So that's another example of studying the competition, looking at their advantages, their disadvantages, the voids, and turning that into an advantage for you. Learn your competition, but use the information in the marketplace once you do. Is that pretty clear with everybody? The information that we just covered about competition. Does anyone have a question about any of that? About using competitive information in the marketplace once you find it out? Okay, well, we will go to the next topic, which is positioning. And we define positioning this way: is how your product is or service is placed in the market relative to competition. And the objective is to find a niche or a gap or a void in the marketplace that your competitors aren't serving or aren't serving as well. And factors that can influence this positioning activity are the product, pricing, how it's placed in the marketplace, the people that it's designed to go after or who is the customer for it, and also how that product or service is packaged. Those are the factors that influence or speak to positioning. So what we'll do is go through a couple of examples to just give you a better idea of what we mean by positioning in the marketplace and what we also mean by positioning yourself in a niche or a void or a gap in the marketplace. Now, we're going to look at this first example dealing with two types of candy. We have Godiva, which is a popular candy, kind of upscale, and you can notice that in its packaging. And they all even also have their own stores. You go into certain shopping malls in certain cities and you'll find a Godiva chocolatier. So it's an upscale kind of brand, even though in recent years they've come out with a lesser brand that's sold at a lesser price. The company's real positioning in the marketplace, or their primary positioning, is geared toward this high-end, upscale type of imagery. Then we have Russell Stover. Russell Stover, just like Godiva, is selling chocolate candy with nuts and fillings in it. But with Russell Stover, they have a package that's a nice package. But as you can see, the ribbon that they have is a graphic image, whereas on Godiva, they got a real ribbon as a part of the packaging. I haven't found any Russell Stover stores. Maybe some exist, but they aren't as, if they do, they aren't at the high level kind of upscale store that Godiva is. So both of them are chocolate candy. Will cure your hunger or your need for something sweet. They're both filled with nuts and fillings that are some of your favorites. We're talking about a 6-ounce package here that of Godiva, as well as a 6-ounce of Russell Stover. But they are different, and they are positioned different in the marketplace. And what we're going to get a chance to see is how they are positioned in the marketplace differently, and that niche piece in terms of what allows one to be different than the other. So I'll admit to you that us doing on this class or this part of the class online puts you all at a disadvantage, because when I do the class live, I actually bring in some Godivas and Russell Stover to demonstrate this, and people have a opportunity to actually eat the candy at the end of class. So you're kind of at a disadvantage with it being online, but the bottom line is that you're going to learn the lesson, and that's what you're most interested in anyway. So let's talk about Godiva and Russell Stover. Both of them are chocolate candy, 6-ounce boxes. Fillings, nuts, will cure your desire for sweets or a chocolate fix. But here's how they're different. Godiva, 6-ounce box, $30. Russell Stover, 6-ounce box, $6.99. They're positioned differently from a price standpoint. They're also positioned differently from the product standpoint, in as much as the Godiva is a high quality chocolate. It's chocolate that probably contains something closer to the natural ingredients or where chocolate originally comes from. But it's a high level product, a little more expensive ingredients involved in it. Russell Stover, standard quality, doesn't have the same kind of ingredients, high level quality of chocolate as Godiva, but it's still chocolate, but it's a more of a standard kind of product. Then we have the position differently from where they are placed in the marketplace, the distribution. Godiva, department stores, high-end candy stores where you'll find them, whereas Russell Stover is in convenience stores, mass merchandisers, pharmacies. That's where you will find those items. So they are positioned differently from a distribution or place standpoint. Then even the customers that they are going after, they are positioned differently. In terms of Godiva, it may be a person that's more image conscious, really want to make a statement or an impression on Valentine's. Person may have a little more disposable income. There are some distinctions about in the profile of that Godiva customer, whereas that customer for Russell Stover may be someone that's a bit more economical, maybe not as much disposable income to spend on items like this. So they are positioned differently from the customer. And also they are positioned differently from the packaging standpoint. High-end decorative ribbons, gold packaging, high quality packaging. With Godiva, Russell Stover, more of a standard, got graphics showing certain things. So both products are chocolate candy with nuts and fillings. Both of them are 6-ounce boxes, but they are positioned differently in the marketplace almost to the standpoint they don't really compete with one another, but they are different, and each one of them have their niche in the marketplace. And I know some of you probably Godiva people. If you aren't Godiva now, once you get these businesses up and running and start doing millions of dollars or what have you, Godiva will be all that you eat, and you'll be going into those Godiva stores all the time. So, so let's take a look at one other one, a marketing niche example. Splenda equal Sweet and Low. Equal and Sweet and Low have been on the market for decades. Splenda hit the market in the late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere around in there. But by 2005, Splenda had 55% of the market share. And the way they achieved that is Splenda looked at the competition, looked at the competition's messaging in terms of what they were using in their advertising to promote themselves. They decided the real niche in this thing, especially during the time frame of the early 2000s, where this phenomena about being more natural and having eating foods that were natural, Splenda decided that that would be the niche for them in the sweetener category. So, positioned themselves in a niche and facilitated their messaging around being the natural sweetener. Now, there's a little bit of an oxymoron with this, because each one of these, Sweet and Low, Splenda, and Equal, are artificial sweeteners. But Splenda was able to say, even though it's an artificial sweetener, it's the natural sweetener. And that messaging, that little niche right there, allowed them to capture 55% of the marketplace or better, even though Equal and Sweet and Low had been in the marketplace long before Splenda. Just another example of a niche. Going back, and it goes back to this defining statement, or this defining step. How are you different? What distinguishes you from the people that are out there selling the same thing, something similar, or a substitute? What makes you different? So that question, as going back to the beginning of this, at the start of you conceptualizing your business, having that difference, that niche, that thing that distinguishes you, is your leverage point for getting into the marketplace and being successful. Here's another example of positioning in niche. Bentley is an automobile that's been around a long time. Bentley was a product from a marketing standpoint that was a position in the marketplace and priced at a price point that was targeted at people with a net worth of $30 million or more. The cars were selling for around $350,000 on up. That was the price of a Bentley. But in studying that marketplace, doing a little more planning and investigation around the marketplace, around the early 2000s, Bentley changed its strategy, because what they realized was that whereas in the old positioning strategy of people with a net worth of $30 million or more, well, there were about 1.8 million of those people at that time. When you start talking about people with a net worth of $3 million, well, there were about 30 million people. Marketplace about 25 times greater. That many more people to sell to. And I'll bring this article with me on Saturday and pass it out to you so you can actually read this story. But what this resulted in is that in 2006, Bentley was the fastest growing luxury car in the industry. And even to this day, they still maintain double-digit sales growth year to year. And they did this by lowering the price of the product. They went from being a $300,000, $350,000 car to down around $180,000, $190,000 car, where it would appeal to that person and be affordable to that person with that $3 million net worth. And they wanted that status and wanted the image that a Bentley would accrue to them. So Bentley lowered the price, came out with a Bentley version that was priced in that $180,000, $190,000 mark. They experienced tremendous sales growth after doing that, and it worked real well for them. So again, looking at where is there a niche, where is there a gap, and there was a gap in Bentley's industry in that marketplace of those people that had a $3 net worth, who wanted something a little more luxurious than a Mercedes-Benz, and that would separate them from the Mercedes-Benz driver, but they couldn't afford the image of the Bentley of the Rolls-Royce. Bentley realized that there was a niche opportunity there. They exploited it, and it worked well for them. It's about having a niche, about being different in the marketplace, about distinguishing yourself. Where is there a void? Where is there an opportunity? So we're going to talk about one other niche, and it involves a treat, the donuts. And we talk about Krispy Kreme and Dunkin' Donut. Now, one thing I want you to observe, looking at Dunkin' and its logo on that coffee cup. Their logo has a coffee cup in it. Doesn't have a donut in the logo, but the logo has a coffee cup. And the way that Dunkin' is positioned in the marketplace is more around convenience. You got the coffee with a couple of donuts displayed. That's what people do when they go into Dunkin'. So it's about convenience, the coffee, a meal on the run, quick, convenient, low price. I'm in a hurry. I can get it fast. That's Dunkin's positioning or niche in the marketplace, whereas Krispy Kreme is more of a treat, an experience, and they do donuts. When you go down south, where I'm from, where Krispy Kreme originated, the big thing for us is late at night, you go to the Krispy Kreme when the red light is on and the donut's hot, and you don't get one or two. You do just like in this photo here. You buy a dozen and you take them home, and and while you are waiting on your donuts at Krispy Kreme, you can see them on the conveyor belt, being made, and the icing spreading across them, and putting the sprinkles on them if they are making that type. It's an experience. And Krispy Kreme is positioned in the marketplace more around that treat experience. Dessert. We do donuts. Still sell donuts like Dunkin', but both of them are very different in terms of how they are placed or positioning their niche in the marketplace. Does everyone understand that? Have any question? The thing that we want to focus in on now, and still in marketing, is dealing with advertising and promotion. And the objective is to communicate your product, service, features, and benefits to the marketplace. That's the role of advertising and promotion. What we're going to do is just talk a bit about some of the key things that are involved with putting together an effective advertising and promotion strategy, things that you want to be mindful of when executing any kind of advertising and promotion. So we'll just identify some of the keys and the tips that everybody wants to remember in executing. Number one, the messaging. The messaging for your advertising and promotion, be it in a newspaper, magazine, billboard, flyer, whatever medium, it's about using those distinguishing features and benefits. That question in the defining step, how are you different? As you can see, that particular statement, that answer to that question is key in terms of building your business. And it shows up here in your advertising and promotion because your advertising and promotion is built around the features and benefits that make you different. The number two thing that you want to remember is develop a plan. Don't be random. Coordinate the activities. Develop a plan of marketing, advertising activities. Regardless of what you're working with, you want to make sure that it's planned. The third thing is define a budget. Have a cost associated with each marketing or promotion activity. The thing that you don't want to do is to, when you're doing your projections of expenditures for your business and you get down to talking about advertising and promotion, you just pick a number. Oh, I'm going to spend $1,000 a month. Well, no, you don't do it that way. You identify what activities that are involved in my plan, and then put a cost to each one of those activities, and that gives you a budget. And you use that budget as your guide in the marketplace to advertise your products and services. The fourth thing is be consistent. The same message from one media to the next. You don't want to have one message being communicated on your flyers, another message being communicated on your website, then there's a third message that's being communicated on a little newspaper ad that you maybe have taken out in a local newspaper. You want to have a consistent message from one media to the other. And that consistent message should consist of those distinguishing features and benefits. The fifth thing is repetition. Geico advertises all day, every day, but they do it for a reason. It's because in order for advertising to work, it has to be repetitive. And people have to see it a number of times. You can think about it yourself. You see a commercial once and it escapes you, but maybe about the 8th or 9th time you see or hear that commercial, you'll stop and you'll pay a little more attention to see what they're talking about. And maybe about the 12th or 13th time, you pay a little more attention to find out if the product or service that they're talking about is something that seems like it might be able to help you. And maybe after several more times hearing that, maybe you will take an action. It takes repeating advertising to get your message across and to have people to respond to it. So it's about repetition. Number 6, have a call to action. when you put that ad in the paper or put something on a flyer, have a call to action. Buy now. Visit my website. Call 1-800 blah blah blah. But you want to tell people what it is that you want them to do. And the final thing is, whatever activity you do, you want to make sure that it's measurable. You have a means to determine what kind of results you achieve, because you're spending this money on advertising and promotion to render some results. And the results 9 times out of 10 relate to additional sales for you. So you want to know what's working and what's not working. And that is working, you will continue to do that. That's not working, you will eliminate it and do something else. So that's why you want to make sure that it's measurable in any activity that you do in terms of advertising and promotion. But any questions about advertising and promotion? Okay, but let me just speak about one additional thing that I didn't have up on the agenda for this evening, but I just want to take a few minutes to talk about digital marketing. A lot of people, have heard about social media and people using social media in marketing. I just want to briefly describe how this phenomena works in terms of your website integrating with social media and email, and how it all works together in terms of getting you sales and customers. And I have a diagram here that kind of tracks what the process is. And here's how social media blogs work in this process. So let's say that there are strangers out in the marketplace that haven't encountered us. They don't know anything about our products, our services. They don't even know that we exist. But maybe there's a blog that we wrote. Maybe there's an article on social media that we published that communicated some value to people, something that they learned something from. Not you out advertising your product per se, but something that you talk about that they can gain value from. Well, that's what we're using to get them into our world as visitors to our website, landing pages, call to actions, or whatever. Because in social media with Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, it's called social for a reason. Social media is where people are socializing. They're networking, getting to know one another. They're sharing pictures, stories, personal events. It's just another way of people doing what they used to do in a live setting over the internet with a lot more people. It's a social gathering. So when you come into that conversation, hawking and selling and promoting your product or service, you're really kind of out of place. It's like being invited to a party. Everybody else is dancing and having a good time and eating food and drinking drinks. And you come into that party selling whatever product that you have with a big sign up, talking loud about it, promoting it, passing out. And people really aren't in that environment for that. They're in that social setting, that party, to have a good time. So the role of social media is to, when you find those people that are of interest to you or interested in you, is to share information with them that may be of interest to them. I'm a hairdresser that does hair, and maybe I meet someone or I publish an article on new hairstyling trends for the summer, for the winter, or whatever. I put that article up and people may read it, but before reading the entire article, I may have a message that says read more, And when they click that piece, then they're taken to a landing page that's associated with my website. And for them to read the rest of that article, they enter in their email address. And when they do, you now have a way to communicate with them and promote to them. But they are then in your world because they have shown interest in something that you're talking about. So it's that social media, that social publishing, that's the role of it. And so when you have those strangers out there, hopefully it's your social publishing that gets them to visit you. And once they visit you and you have your call of action, your landing page that relates more information about what it is that you're doing and the benefits of the products and services that you're selling, hopefully it turns into a lead. They show more interest. And once they're into that mode, you're trying to convert them by sending them emails, even more information about of value to them, staying in touch with them to hopefully get them to become a customer. And once they're a customer, you continue to share value, content, do surveys with them, communicate with them. So once they become customers, they will maybe become promoters of your brand. That's how this digital marketing process works. And that's the role of the different elements in terms of social media and blogs, landing pages, emails, surveys, is to move people along this chain of events that take them from being someone that doesn't know you, you don't know them, to actually being a customer and an evangelist promoter of your product or service. All right. Just wanted to take a little time and share that with people because there's a lot of information out there related to social media, and just wanted to share a little perspective about what that piece is about. Okay, let's talk a bit about the art of pricing. That's said earlier, you got the science of pricing and the art of pricing. The art of pricing is that value associated with a customer's perception. It's like a person that sees a piece of artwork, and to me, that piece of artwork is worth $5,000, but to somebody else, it may not be worth anything in their eyes or their view. Well, the same kind of concept or the same perspective works with a lot of different products and services out in the marketplace. So we'll just talk a bit about this art of pricing. And it's something that we probably all familiar with, just probably have not thought about it in the vein of what we're talking about here as it relates to your business and a strategy of entering the marketplace or being placed in the marketplace. So let's talk about the art of pricing, looking at the example of a purse. A purse has a storage compartment in it, and some purses maybe have even more than one storage compartment. Maybe they have a storage compartment on the side wall that has a zipper so you can protect some valuables. But in addition to that, we can see that it has a handle for carrying that makes it easy to transport. It's made of leather, so it's a durable product and attractive in its appearance. There are some decorative accessories. It's lined with a little belt and belt buckles on it. Some other accessory there that looks like possibly a key ring. And maybe this particular purse may retail for $79 or so, I'll say. And you can get them for even less dollars than that, $29, $25, $19.95. The idea is this concept, this purse has all of the components of any other purse, and it's priced at $79. But now let's take, for example, sometimes we can see the same concept, but you can turn and change some things about that concept that makes its price altogether different. And we call that the art of pricing. So, just like we were talking about the purse example, here's a purse. Same concept. Has a storage compartment, has handles, some decorative accessories with the little straps on the side. I don't know what they are for, but they are there. Maybe even have some additional compartments on the inside. It has made of leather, maybe a high-grade leather. But you take that same concept that we saw on the previous page with the purse for $79, put a Louis Vuitton brand on it, put the Louis Vuitton logo all over the purse, and that same purse may cost us $1,000 or better. That's what we call the art of pricing. Same concept, but different value based on how it's perceived in the marketplace. Another example may be a watch. Got a Timex, has a crystal on it, some hands, a band, and it lets me know what time of day it is. I can take that same concept, put a gold band on it, a crystal on the dial, some jewels on the face of it, has some hands, put Rolex, carve that brand on the band, and now that same concept may be worth $10,000, whereas that Timex I can get for $10.99. So it's that art of pricing. It even goes back to the candy example. Chocolate candy, Godiva, Russell Stover, both of them, chocolate candy. But there are some things about how they are positioned in the marketplace. Their brands are known a certain way. So the same concept from an art of pricing standpoint can be different. Let's just briefly talk about some other pricing concepts when it comes to this art of pricing. Customer-focused pricing is setting a price according to what customers believe product or service is worth. And you got three types: opportunistic, which is premium price on a product in short supply. An example may be toys at Christmas time. The new Xbox is coming out. We only got 500 at Walmart. You're going to line up the day before Thanksgiving to get them, but they are priced real high because they just entered the marketplace. That's what we call that opportunistic pricing. Psychological pricing, making price sound right to customers. $9.99 instead of $10. 3 for $10 rather than let's say 29 cents a piece. That's psychological pricing. Another piece of this art. Price skimming, setting a high price on a high demand product, usually in its early stage of development. For example, flat screen TVs, when they first entered the marketplace, were a few $1,000s. Now you can get a flat screen television for a few hundred. Loss leaders, selling a product or service at a loss to attract customers. Supermarkets use canned soup as a loss leader a lot of times. Come in and get 10 cans for $3, $5, or whatever, $10 or what have you. and that attracts people into the store to buy other items that are priced more profitably. So that's customer-focused strategies. And then there's competition-focused pricing. Prices comparable to what competitors are charging. Penetration pricing, selling products or services at a loss to gain market share. Defensive pricing, discouraging new competitors by temporarily lowering prices. And responsive pricing, monitoring competitive pricing and adjusting as needed while keeping in mind what's good for the business. So these are some other examples of the art of pricing. Okay, so the next session, which is coming up on this Saturday, is a live session at GNEC. It will begin at 10 on Saturday morning. And the topics that we will be covering will be topics related around financial issues. First, dealing with this science of pricing, where we're going to talk about markup and gross profit margin pricing, how to determine an hourly charge if you are selling a service where you charge by the hour. Well, we're going to show you one method of determining what that hourly charge should be. We're going to talk about profit margin and how to calculate and determine profit margin. Same thing with break even, calculating and determining break even, and doing a cash flow projection. So those will be the things that we will cover on Saturday. I hope to see everybody there this Saturday, because it's an important session. And when it gets down to the financial issues, that's a real important part about your business. The business is about the money and making the numbers work. If the numbers don't work, if the money doesn't work, the business doesn't work. So I want to make sure that everybody attends and get the information that is going to help you as it relates to making sure that your business can stay afloat financially. I want to remind people, please look for the link and the email to the replay on tonight's session, so you'll see all of these slides that go along with the narration. And I'll look to see everybody on Saturday. Looking forward to being there.